Good morning and thank you for joining us. I am Alero Edu and this is Sunrise.
Good morning, I'm Nel Taiwe, and beautiful, beautiful day it is. I was almost spoiled by some sad incident though.
The traffic.
Yeah, but the traffic was particularly caused by an accident, an unfortunate incident along the road.
Oh, you saw the accident?
Not exactly, but from a distance, because you're stuck in that place and then you find your way around, go to, do a detour, come out in front, and then you look behind, far behind you, and you're seeing at a point where the entire vehicle stopped. So there's something in front that would have caused all of them to stop.
Yeah.
And that was the situation. So, well, I do hope, but I'm sure our correspondent will tell us what the situation is.
In time. Talking about traffic in in a particular part of Lagos, I witnessed something the other day. A company truck plucked somebody's wing mirror off and they tried to run away. But they forgot that their name was written on their truck. And guess what? They had no number plates, both front and back. And guess what? Apropos mistress, journalist, I brought out my phone and I took the picture of the truck. Apno table water. Be careful. And when your drivers are driving your company cars that have your names on them, do tell them to be extra careful because you might be held liable for something you don't know anything about. Now, I am suspecting that this person is now making contact with Apno Water to get them to fix her car. And guess what? When you guys are driving and you see women, you seem to just get all courageous and muscular. It's only a woman. Let's deal with her. Comments, please.
It's not just about. It's not necessarily because it's a woman.
Okay.
As far as it's another vehicle, my wife would always say, drive for yourself and drive for the other person. Just pretend you're driving the other car for the other person. Because the other person might just be lost. Case in point, the first accident I had, I was driving and actually, for a split second, slept off.
No!
So I hit this guy and he comes down.
You hadn't slept the night before?
I slept. Incidentally, I do remember that day because that's the first accident, so that memory is still fresh. So the guy came down, looked at me and said, leave your troubles at home and drive. And he entered his car.
I bet they go. Carry your trouble, they go.
But for me, it was like, oh.
How right.
Very right.
Leave your troubles,
leave whatever it is that's bothering you at home and drive for you and for the other person.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that made me join the road safety special marshals. Because at the end of the day, we still need to educate everyone around us that, hey, driving is not just entering the car, shifting the gear, and moving it along the road. No. Besides understanding the traffic rules, some people will tell you, I've studied the traffic rules, I know all of it.
Yeah, right.
There is a skill to driving, and we need it.
And law enforcement, for crying out loud, if you dealt with road traffic offenders more decisively, maybe we'd be better drivers. We stopped at a traffic light this morning. A downfall driver found a way to overtake us on the curb and just run the red light. And I'm thinking, what kind of madness is this so early in the morning? Where are you rushing to? There's no traffic.
We tend to sometimes laugh at these things because you don't want to vent, you don't want to rage on the road. And sometimes just stop. Sometimes I just move away from my lane, slide. When I see someone trying to shunt, and many times not it's downfall drivers, human beings who are supposedly elitists, you see them shunting because I have to get there first. So I just move slightly, and then I move out of my lane. So come and hit me now because you want to shunt. Are you the only person that's in a hurry? I asked that question many times because I'm like, come on. Most times the traffic in Lagos is not caused by an accident. Alero, many times the traffic in Lagos is caused by individuals who think, no, if I move this way, I can get there before the other people.
Deliberate mad action.
On a 2-lane road, you have 6 lanes. Caused by individuals who are supposed to be educated. I witnessed this one. One guy did something like that and the police stopped him. And then he was like, why are you stopping me? Can't you see those bus drivers doing the same? And the police looked at him and said,
Are you a bus
are you
driver?
a bus driver? He said, in pidgin, in the local English language, he said, Oga, see motorway they drive. See the bus where they there. Now they say, he
Good
could not have an
question.
answer.
Good question.
So me, I drove off and I was like, good for you. Because why do we do this? Aleo, sorry about for the person that was hit. Sorry that you had to witness it. And it's good that you
and
took
I've
a
got
picture.
pictures
It's good that you took a
of
picture.
the driver
And
and
the
of the truck.
Thank
and
you.
I have sent that picture to road safety. Why is that truck on the road with no license plate? Front or back?
Oh, you're talking about, what about the ones that don't have tail lights? No tail lights, nothing.
And
They're
most
all
of the time they're trucks.
They are trucks, and they are falling
Trucks,
apart.
yes.
So what's going on?
And in the
What's
night,
going
they're
on?
so dangerous. You're speeding down a highway and something is broken down in front of you,
And you
and
don't
there's
know.
no sign at all, and you just ram into it. That's
Or-
you. Good night.
Or there's so much smoke coming from the truck.
You can't even
And the lights are so dim that you can't even see them. What do you do?
And then they harass me for my roadworthiness. Those ones have roadworthiness certificates.
Yes, they do.
Law enforcement again, please rise up to your duty.
It's okay. Let's look at what we have lined up on the menu for today.
No, before we look at that, I'm waiting for guidelines as to how Nigeria is going to open up its country. What are the guidelines for eateries and restaurants and malls, churches? We are still waiting. Well, we still have 1 week, so
Yes,
we hope that...
they're working on it. I think the current situation, the kind of restrictions there are right now, are likely to be, transited into that guideline, because they will still remain for a long time. You know, the social distancing.
Of course they will remain
the
for a
mask,
long time.
The sanitizing of hands, washing of hands, and then minimal gatherings, minimal number of people gathering in any particular place. It's going to remain for a long time, because we still, I say we, are still learning to
deal with COVID-19, which doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Someone
the guidelines in other countries are things to, to actually listen to and learn from and expect, so you can prepare your mind for what is coming.
As I say, it is well.
It is well, and we shall get through this together.
Indeed.
Right. So we're going to start with Nigeria's growth within the pandemic. Did we grow at all?
Well, there's some kind of growth.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
we're innovation everywhere. Now we'll be looking at curbing abuse during the COVID-19. I mean, there have been reports of domestic violence, plenty of it all over.
Understandably.
Yeah.
And then COVID-19 again, fumigation as a response. Really? Is that working? Well, we'll be looking at that.
The Eid al-Fitr celebration, it's happening tomorrow. We'll be discussing that.
Salah. And then we shall close with the artist of the week. And he's a very interesting indeed. Musician, actor, all rolled into one,
And a very, very interesting fellow. You'll be glad to meet him. But just take a moment and we will be back. Just let you know that you can be a part of the conversations. Our Twitter handles will be on the screen. Pay attention today, especially so, because you might pick up one or two things that will help you in your growth process. We'll be back in a minute. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Alera, to the others.
Yes, now let's get the show on the road. Nigeria has woken up to a new social and economic reality since the COVID-19 hit us. Hit the world. And Nigeria, being part of the world, has had its fair share of people being infected with COVID-19, and we have even managed to record a few deaths. Although some people still don't believe that there's anything like COVID-19. But the campaigns are still going on, trying to convince people that there is the coronavirus, this new strain of it that is ravaging the world, and it is actually killing people. So, we had our first case at the beginning of February. What has happened to us since then? Has there been any growth in Nigeria in any form since we were hit by this pandemic? This and some other similar questions we're going to put to our panel this morning. And our panel is made up of 2 gentlemen in Lagos and 2 in Abuja. And I will begin with the ones in Lagos. We have the CEO of Resource Intermediaries Limited, Mr. Soji Oyawoye. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we also have Mr. Adegoke Omotola, who is a management consultant.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And from Abuja, we shall have Mr. Collins Nwosu, who is the Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Economists. Welcome. As well as the convener, Nigeria First, Ezekiel Nya Etuk. Good morning to both of you. Can you hear me, guys, in Abuja?
I think they can.
Well, I hope
Yes,
you
very
can
well,
hear
loud
us.
and clear. Quite clear.
Now, let me start with Mr. Oyawoye. How much do you think this pandemic has affected Nigeria's, let's begin with the economy of this nation?
Well, actually, economy is where I practice. I'm also an economist by training, though I do more of HR consulting for a while now. The impact has been significant, and predominantly in the following areas. Businesses have been greatly affected. Now, the ripple effect of businesses being affected is unemployment. My co-panelists and I were just talking in the back room there about U.S. having over 40 million declared unemployed right now. The reality is we don't even have the statistics. But I can bet a lot of businesses have shut down, and they've had to shut down for 2 reasons. One, Nigeria is an economy that over the years, we're a happy nation. We're just excited. So there's a lot of business that is fed by that excitement, happiness with no substance as it is. So the reality of our times is with all of that shut down as it is. I mean, I walked in with my co-panelist, Goke, who I know very well. We're both wearing masks. I didn't know it was him. I didn't greet him until we got here and removed the masks. I mean, it's that bad. So businesses are affected, of course, because of the oil collapse and the nation's earnings capacity and government revenue. So unemployment has also grown. The pandemic is affecting everyone, regardless of your social status or your wealth. However, the poor are worse affected, unfortunately.
Okay. Mr. Motola, some big companies even are feeling this. We have heard of some that have gone into receivership, some that have declared bankrupt, even abroad. In Nigeria, the economy is run mainly by small and medium companies, businesses, and most of them are going to be forced to shut down. What does that mean for our economy?
Well, it's a major challenge, even for the government. And that's why we are finding a situation where there's this ease of lockdown. And I think even yesterday, the government of Lagos State came up with a 4-page guideline on register to open, which is to try to kickstart the economy again. And the government itself, I mean, we're not immune to what is happening globally. So if U.S. can have job losses of over about almost about 40 million.
40 million.
And NECA is saying that, the unemployment is going to be almost about 33.5% from 24%. And so for MSMEs, I think the government is moving in the right direction. The CBN, even Lagos State is also in the area of LSCTF, giving them a moratorium for those who have taken a facility. And also, beyond that, they're also trying to make sure that they get them to register these businesses, and so that they can look at their needs, I believe
and
that...
they're also giving them discounts, aren't they?
And giving them discounts. So
Yeah.
I think it's not a time to panic. I believe that it's a time for businesses also to reset. And going forward, there needs to be what I can call a collaboration. There's going to be mergers. Those who can get it right will come out of it much more better. But although there will be some casualties,
So just talked about, he said, excitement with no substance.
Okay.
You talked about there are going to be measures, especially for those who are able to ride the storms, able to ride the waters. But let me take you to Abuja. Collins, when you hear this kind of things, as regards excitement, no substance, what does that say of our infrastructure, economic infrastructure? We've not even entered the human capital first. Let's leave human capital. Let's look at the infrastructure that we have. Do you think this is an opportunity that has been taken to rejig?
Thank you, Nilta. I would like to paint a scenario. I think there is a huge opportunity here, and it's an opportunity for reset, as Goke has said. It's an opportunity for reset. We have infrastructure deficits, huge infrastructure deficits, which is affecting the economy. I mean, we can even see it in the supply chain. So global supply chain, local supply chains are affected. And those are the things that drive, some of the things that drive the economy. So I'll paint a scenario. Right now, with the work from home era coming on board, what you're seeing is more people are beginning to change the way they operate. Now, if I'm going to work from home, assumes that I have a home to work in and somewhere that is conducive. So other things, infrastructure now changes. My infrastructure needs now changes to the internet, for instance. I need power, I need internet. Are those available to me to enable me work from home? So I do not need to move to Lagos, for instance, if I have gotten a job in Lagos. I can stay in my remote rural area and work from there. What does that do for us? That means that cheaper houses can be built in the rural areas. Migration from rural to urban areas would reduce or be controlled. And you're not having...
Collins, I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you here. We need to take a very quick break. We'll come back, start off from that point, rejigging the infrastructure. Houses can be built in rural areas at cheaper rates and all of that. But we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Festus Akimboye, while he's talking, he says COVID-19 pandemic is bound to have some serious implications for Nigeria's economy, and Nigerians should prepare for tough times. FG must be honest with Nigerians about it. Wasborn was talking about the women on the road. He says sometimes they are unnecessarily aggressive on the road, but it's not just about the women. Men are also sometimes unnecessarily aggressive. But Collins, we were talking about an opportunity, an obvious opportunity to rebuild infrastructure, housing, for instance, and light internet. Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Nilta. I was just trying to paint a scenario of what is possible and what is currently happening for quite a number of people. But you see, infrastructure challenges will not disappear overnight, because what brought us here, over time, there's been a decay in the infrastructure. So there's need to rejig it. And we have to think a bit differently about how we approach this, because the traditional methods of approaching the solutions may not work as it is. What is a stimulus, for instance, in its own case? A stimulus is basically something is happening and it's not moving as it should be. Then you try to stimulate it. You try to make it, wake up from where it was. So the stimulus packages that are going on right now that are meant to help small businesses may not necessarily help them with infrastructure. So we have to look at that. But there's a huge, huge opportunity for growth in the economy. There's a huge opportunity to rethink the way we approach infrastructural growth, so that supply chains are opened up, so that the new opportunities like the work from home I mentioned from is opened up. And it cannot be looked at from one view. We have to have a holistic view. It has to be beyond value chain. It has to be not just value chain, but value-driven infrastructure development. And that's why I gave the example of what will happen in housing. We have a deficit in housing already. So if people are getting new jobs and you're saying that they should work from home, you're assuming they have homes. But more than 20 of the 44 million, the figures aren't even clear because of statistics dearth. Where do they work from? What is the internet penetration? Do we have, someone asked, we have internet, but do we have the internet service because it's epileptic? Then power, can we adopt modular things? So there are opportunities that are coming up right now, as well as the challenges that already exist. But I say we have to think of it differently and bring solutions, not in the traditional form of things.
Architect Nyaitok, we have to think of it in creative way to bring out solutions from this. Some businesses are dying, but apparently some others are growing. Suddenly, some tailors that were not getting customers are suddenly getting customers making masks. So can we begin to look at more of these opportunities and how we can use that to move our economy and our social structure forward?
That with every sympathy to some people that have lost loved ones through the COVID, and some other people whose businesses are suffering, let me say with every sense of responsibility, again, I say that COVID-19 is probably one of the best things that has ever happened to this country. So many people, so many of us have prayed and looked forward. At the time, I actually personally prayed that God should actually cock our oil wells. Let these oils dry up and let us wake up and live a real life. We've been living false life, fake life. Governors come to Abuja every day to come and just pick and go back home. I tell a very little story that illustrates this. In 2007, I wanted to contest the governorship of Akwa Ibom State, and I went to a very close friend of mine, Mr. Donald Duke, then, who was a governor. And he sat me down, and one of the things he said, I can't forget this. He said, yeah, that's what he calls me. He said, the difference between Akwa Ibom and Cross River is that Akwa Ibom has so much money, they don't need to think. Cross River, we don't have money, so all we do is think. And let me stop the story for that. Come to Nigeria. We're not thinking as a nation. We're not using the best that we have of us. We have a lot of false figures, false indices. I'm so happy to be with consultants and economists and specialists in the area, and I, an ordinary Nigerian, but that's just really the beauty of it all. We are at a point where the oil is dried up by COVID, dried in parentheses, and I'm so happy. But my greatest concern is, at this point in time, do we have leaders who are willing to step in and seize the moment? Or do we have people who are clueless and they're just wondering, what are they saying in America? Lockdown, oh, everybody lockdown. What are they saying in China? Wear mask, everybody, wear mask. And in Nigeria, wearing mask has become like a fashion statement, which has become chin masks. If we had thinking people, instead of saying wear mask, they will say cover mouth and nose. Because you have a man who wears a mask and the nose is completely open. As far as he's concerned, he's wearing mask. But he hasn't understood that the bottom line is cover your mouth and nose. Even our governors on television are talking to us with the mask there, but the nose open. And the average man thinks that's the right thing to do. Once I can get it down my chin, I'm wearing mask. And that's not the mentality that we must, if we are not careful, we'll end up having what we call double jeopardy. But if we are careful to have thinkers, I can't use this word enough, thinkers who sit down. My brother has just come to be an advocate for housing. God bless you, my brother. Now, one of the things that has come out now is working from home. If we are working from home, who is there to sit down? I'm so happy that the Minister of Housing, Mr. Fashola, asked me, send in certain documents, let me look at. Can we just network housing development outside the cities where we fashion those estates to work at home, dynamics? We make sure that certain things are provided within such an estate, something like the power. It does not take us too much
to have power within a certain environment. Number two, telecommunications. Even if it means free wireless internet, we do that so that we encourage a lot of our young people to go into such, not just hubs, estates. They live there, they operate there, they work from there. And what do you have? Urban-rural migration. What do you have? Opening up the rural areas. What do you have? Work from home and freeing us of all the infrastructural, weight of people coming to the city and everything. What do you have? A new thinking of people who are not looking for government, who are not looking for job, entrepreneurs. Go to a place like Akwa Ibom, you'll be amazed at the creativity of the young people on internet. In fact, I tell people that Akwa Ibom should forget agriculture, everything 100%, and build on AI, and build on, ICT. We will become the Silicon Valley of not just Nigeria, but the West African hub. Imagine these sort of hubs being there in rural areas because you don't need to come to the city. Maybe at weekends you can come in for the cinemas and go back. If we have people who are willing to think that way, at the end of COVID-19, people will say, Nigeria, this was designed by God to bless you. That's my take.
Again, back to what you said earlier, excitement, no substance. But from what the architect and Collins have talked about, Nigerians are thinking. Even without infrastructure, Nigerians have always been known to think. Do you see this as another opportunity for those thinking and those not thinking to come together and innovate?
Well, the thing with thinking is first, in reality, everything is created twice. Everything is first created in our thoughts, and then it is acted out. I beg to differ that the bulk of that thinking are for selfish pursuits, not selfless pursuits. And the major problem I envision we have as a nation is we keep on saying Nigeria this, Nigeria that. Who is Nigeria? Nigeria is not the geographical space. Nigeria really is you and I. What is the quality of your thinking? If there's an announcement today on Channels TV that I've just been appointed a minister, my old schoolmates would host me to dinner. My village would want to, these are people who never came to help me with children's school fees or my house rent. So there's a lot of thinking. I take that. But if we'll stretch it, I just came in through traffic getting here. I saw a lot of beautiful cars taking one way. That's a lot of the thinking. So I think negative. A lot of that thinking is not selfless until we begin to think for the other person, not for me and my family, right? That, I think, is a fundamental problem. So yes, there's a lot of value, there's a lot of creativity that is available and inherent. But if you check and sit down with 80% of those doing that thinking, the ultimate end of their thinking is for me. So until we change, so the real Nigeria is you and I. It's not the leaders. There's nothing wrong with us.
So you're implying that this kind of thinking, even though we seem to be growing in the midst of a pandemic, it's a warped kind of thinking?
It is. I mean, you all heard recently, it's public, when the MD of a bank goes on air and says, I'm sacking practically all of the bank. Why? Because there's a pandemic. We've been making some losses. How about when you're making profits?
And pots and pots.
Did you pour it back to those staff?
True.
So you can't spend a few months in losses? So there's a lot of thinking, but a bulk of it is selfish.
Okay. We're talking about this being an opportunity for Nigeria to rejig and rethink and reset. Part of this resetting, something you mentioned earlier, was how to get the small businesses going again. And part of that plan is access to funds. Over this past week, there's plenty of talk on radio, on television, as to how banks should make more money available. Even the CBN has come out and said banks should make money available to small businesses. But my thought is, Is anybody thinking of how this money is going to be paid back? Small businesses who are about to go under, some of whom have already gone under, you want them to come back and you want them to go and borrow money to come back. Are you thinking of how they're going to make enough money to be able to pay back their creditors?
Well, if we look at it from that perspective, we might not even encourage government to, because they're also listening to, this program. But I would like to say that there are a lot of vibrant SMEs and those who are, within the innovation space, particularly IT, and doing wonderful things. I think this is a time for government to really show up and provide the necessary leadership. Even in the UK, you find that there's what you call furlough and so on and so forth. It's still going to be in place till probably September, and even those billionaires are tapping into that facility. Yeah. And so for the SMEs, we have no, there are systems that need to be in place. I mean, there are already systems in place, even by LSCTF and, other government agencies that have been, doing that. I think we shouldn't look at it from just the perspective of, are they going to pay back? Because some are already dying.
But that's the priority of the bank.
I know.
How am I going to get my money back?
That's why I said the systems are already in place. The systems are in place, I mean, for example, as an SME, you don't just approach a bank and they'll give you the funds. They look at your collateral, look at your history, they look at your, in terms of, even the business, how long has it been in existence and so on and so forth.
In reality, those that are intended to benefit would not get it by those structures.
No, what I'm saying.
Because they won't have those.
Correct, they won't have those systems.
The systems was being in place because, I mean, what is the, safety of funds? Because government is not just going to be dishing out funds.
Father Christmas.
Yes, and so there has to be business structure for any, even those who are listening now. If you have a business and you don't have a structure, then you will not be able to tap into the funds that are available, even the ones from CBN. So structure. That's the way forward. That's the way forward. Structure.
If I may, can I throw some light on that? Now, you see, money always pursues value. I am strongly against a business, small or big, going for loans as a first option, especially when you're struggling to survive. It's like someone who has fallen into a ditch, right? What you want to do in a ditch is to stop digging. Taking a loan when your business is dying or about to die actually digs the hole further, because you are taking a loan to take care of outstanding liabilities. In the next 1 or 2 months, that loan is due for repayment. You haven't solved the past problem. You've just worsened it. Now, but if there's value to be given, so my advice basically for small businesses or any businesses, get a business coach. You see, we make a mistake of that. So who is a coach, basically? A coach is someone who's seen further or who has been where you'd like to be, right? Experience is not the best teacher. Somebody else's evaluated experience is the best teacher. So what someone has achieved in 20 years, you can do it in 5 years if you engage a business coach. But many are hesitant to do that because they just want to learn by themselves.
It still goes back to structure. I mean, the coach is going to teach you structure.
Exactly. So loan won't be the option.
Okay, I was going to take this to Collins because I know I have an idea that you and your institute, you work with small businesses, especially in the area of export, not just import, because Nigeria has been known to be an import country. But you've been talking about export and all of that. Is there a structure, even now, before the pandemic, within the pandemic, how are those businesses thinking? Are they still thinking export? Are they still thinking that they have what it takes to feed the rest of the world when within there's no food, so to speak?
I think that's a significant area to look at. And you cannot look at it in isolation. So I'll take us a few steps back. One is we have to think of the end result. What do we want to achieve as a nation? What do we want to achieve as a people? And Mr. Yahweh has clearly said it. Nigeria is not a geographical location. It's you and I. So you and I, what do we want to achieve? When you talk about a Nigerian, what does a Nigerian look like? What would you say a Nigerian should be? When we have those definitions and we start running, it makes it easier to run. So it brings me down to export, the SMEs that are running export, because we've been trying to build SMEs to have a global presence. So take you from your local business to global presence. And one thing I can tell you is this: collaboration is key. The infrastructure is what it is. We're not going to change that right immediately, but we'll say there's need for support in that area. But collaboration is key. So we're going to have to need hubs to work. Now, what have we done so far? Is to look for cooperatives. Cooperatives meaning people who have like minds, people who have similar operations. So we'll go for share, for instance, you go to the share people, the community, and say, hey, look, as a people, you can generate this volume. So now we're doing it in a local community, so we're keeping them engaged. Again, going back to making use of what is available. So that community is going to produce to certain standards. Now, they cannot do it on their own. That's why we're intervening. They can't do it on their own because, for instance, the cost of certification is so high. And they need to get certain certification to meet the global standards. So
Collins,
when we're looking
apparently
at...
every time you have to talk, that's when we need to go on a break. But please don't lose your train of thought. So we'll come back in a minute and tidy this up, please. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Ndubisiwa says the lockdown should have been and can still be used to improve on quality of roads and complete ongoing road projects across the country, especially in the southeast and south-south interstate link roads that are mostly in a sorry state. Elder Daria Debanjo says it's unfortunate that in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. We have vibrant personalities but no cohesion. But is the political leadership ready? He says it goes beyond politics. Collins, you were talking about the way forward.
Yes, I think the thing is we have to begin to look inwards. And I was given an example of what we're doing in the export space. So working through communities and then trying to bring those communities together, call them cooperatives, and have a shared value. So with the shared value of those communities, with those individuals who are Nigerians, bringing together their resources. So I bring my 1 ton of whatever I have, the next person brings 1 ton of whatever they have, and we're able to meet the scale. And on the investment sides, we now bring the technical expertise, we bring in the certification and all of that. So it's a structure of a sense. And the point being that we can't go it alone. You have to look for like minds and others that you can go it with. Our colleagues in Lagos with you there have mentioned a few things. You don't pour water into a sinking boat. Nonetheless, you look out for the opportunities and see how you can pull them out. So if we're going to be investing, if the banks are going to be putting money in small businesses, then they need to vet the businesses that they're putting money in. The current system that is saying, come, let's train you for a couple of days is effective, but it could go deeper. For instance, I say the University of the Igbo mentorship system, where you have people who have gone through proper trade or whatever businesses that they've gone through that system, they've gone through the mentorship, they now understand how these things work. If you pump money into those systems, you're sure that they can, regenerate. So I'll put it this way. If I take money and give it to someone who's in the corporate world, who hasn't had that experience, and give him, say, 2 million naira, at the end of the year, I may come back and he will tell me, I had to pay for an office, I had to pay for this, I had to pay for that. I've not been able to generate funds. But if I take 500,000 naira and give it to someone who is already running successfully that business, maybe those using Abuja, for instance, I go to the Apple market and look for 1 or 2 of those boys that have just been freed from their ogas, and I give them 500,000 naira each. By December, same time as the corporate person, I will see that this guy has used his 500,000 naira. So what has happened? One has gone through an education and an enlightenment system. He's gone through a form of coaching, as Mr. Yahweh has said. He's gone through a form of business coaching that has empowered him and given him the capacity to do what is required. So capacity is a huge thing that we lack. you know, we can't look at the current issues in isolation. I said we have to look at the nation and say, what do we want to be? What do we want to look like at the end of the day? I'll give another example. We've been at home for a couple of weeks. Schools are on lockdown. And I asked myself, what do my children really need to learn? Because is the 1+1 working for them? Is that what is going to take them through to survive? Are we just educating them for the sake of they have a degree? Or is it something that they can use and bring back into society? So some of the things that we've engaged in are a little bit different. So we need to rethink our curriculum. We need to think of how we're integrating with those who have really, really worked and succeeded. Remember, our Bureau of Statistics is saying that over 80% of Nigeria's GDP is run, non-oil export is run by small businesses. And if that is the case, then that's 80% of our economy that we're not paying attention to, the way we should pay attention to it. So we're doing palliatives, we're doing stimulus. Remember, I said stimulus is just that something is already in place and it's dying, then you stimulate it. But nothing is in place right now. So this is ground zero. And as architect said, we have to just look at ground zero and rebuild from ground zero. So think of the end in mind, frankly.
Okay. Ezekiel, this started from importation and export, and it was actually about food. So let me take it back to food. Before the pandemic, we already had problems in that sector, in the agri sector. We had herders and farmers clashing in most of, well, in the food basket of Nigeria. And then this pandemic comes along and it actually compounds our problem. So let us look at the near future. How do we stand regarding feeding ourselves as a nation?
Good question, probably not to an excellent person. The reason is that I'll rather talk generically, let me put it that way. It doesn't take rocket science for you to know how food comes about. In Nigeria, farmers go to farm and the produce of the farmers, because we don't run these large-scale farms, the produce of the farmers come to feed us. Now, farmers have not been farming because of the herders' clash, with the farmers. They've not been farming before the pandemic. And then the pandemic comes. We didn't have strategic thinkers who would say, in locking down, let's do a two-step approach. While we are locking down the cities, can we now encourage even the city dwellers to go to the rural areas? What can we do on a massive scale on the food production, cultivation basis? How can we step up and say, enough of this herder-farmers clash? Do we have, the basic problem that we have is my concern about the drivers of the system. What is really their interest? Is it Nigeria, the welfare of Nigeria, the well-being of Nigeria, or is it politics? What is politically expedient? If you touch this, for instance, they are saying, oh, you have to open up, let people go to the mosque, let them go to the churches. Why? Because if they don't go, election is coming, it will affect us. They are our voters. What do our leaders have as the driving force for their decisions and policies? The well-being of the country or their political interest? Except we start to explore that. And let me draw two lines of Nigerians. Let me draw the line of the governors.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. I'm very sorry I have to interrupt you. We need to start winding down now, so I'd like to take your last word on this.
Okay. My last word on this is that, number one, we have been very unfair to the young people. Number two, we have an opportunity where I appeal to our drivers to do everything humanly possible. I'll end up with a little story. In 2019, after the elections, I called a group of young people, just my Facebook. I said, what can you do between 10 and 20, 50, 100,000? Apply if you can do something with it. About 800 people applied overnight. I said, okay, come physically to where I am. About 500 came. And I used 1 week to interview them one by one. and I gave them loans ranging from 10,000 to 100,000. I want to tell you that, number one, I invested on people who are already doing business, doing things, little things. Some needed just 20,000. And I want to tell you, number two, that so many of them have 100% repaid. We know that we put some
Very much,
obstacles in the
Ezekiel.
way
We
of
hear
our
you.
young
We
people.
hear you. We hear you. Collins, your final word, please.
I think it's important for us to look at this from an ends perspective, what we want to achieve as a nation, what we want to achieve as a people, and begin to put those structures in place. So if you're saying that we have to do food security, we need to do certain things, then where are the storages? Can we have local storages? Can we have education? Can we build capacity? It's important for those things to be done, because if, as Yahweh says clearly, you create twice. So if we cannot create in our minds, then we cannot have the physical manifestation. So we as a nation have to start thinking strategically in terms of everything. In terms
Thank you,
of
Collins.
everything.
Adegoke.
Thank you so much. I think at this point, there's a lot of opportunity in the system. SMEs, they need to collaborate. And if need be, some businesses have to pivot, change direction. Thank you. Yeah.
Rather than Nigerians' growth within the pandemic, I would change that to my growth within the pandemic. There's no Nigeria without you and I. And to move forward, get a life coach or get a business coach. And be careful. There are a lot of experts who call themselves coaches out there. Check the antecedents. What value have they created before you engage their services?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Soji Oyawoye, CEO, Resource Intermediaries Limited. Adegoke Omotola, management consultant, who both joined us from our studio in Lagos.
Thank you.
As well as Collins Nwosu, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Economists, and Ezekiel Inya Etuk, architect and convener, Nigeria First, both of whom joined us from our studios in Abuja. Sorry, when you're having so much fun, there's never enough time. That is the nature of television. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sunrise will bring you another interesting topic in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. And okay, Professor Imonoka Enehena says Nigeria is not that rich like we think. Budget of states of New York is almost like the budget of the continent. Angola, with 32 million people, annual budget is about $45 billion, which is far bigger than Nigeria's budget. Dubai, a state in UAE, 95% of our income is non-oil and gas sector. In other words, Nigeria really needs to rethink. And as Soji said, Soji says, let's not say Nigeria's good, we should think my growth. So if I'm thinking, Nigeria is thinking. But while we're talking about...
The same professor says it's time to do a rethink to grow our SMEs by bringing down the exchange rate, below double digit, produce basic infrastructure for them to thrive and get proper economic roadmap to deal with our indigenous and peculiar situations. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof. Let's switch gears and look at something else that's happening within the pandemic. When we're opening, we talked about an increased rate of domestic violence, and it's been a problem even before the pandemic, but some say it's been worsened by the restrictions, so people get to spend more time together until you see some other sides that were not very obvious. Now, according to a statement by the United Nations, we're taking a look at the increase in the domestic violence. The UN put out a statement that domestic violence has increased by reason of the lockdown. But how is that panning out here in Nigeria? To help us discuss this, we have Ms. Julie Oka-Donley, who's the Director General of NAPTIP. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Donley.
Thank you for having me.
And how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, well done. We do understand that your job requires that you ensure you look out for issues of trafficking and violence and all of that. But with that report, for instance, by the United Nations, what's your thinking?
Actually, during this COVID-19 lockdown, a lot of families have had to stay together for longer periods than previously. Like, for example, most people have to wake up in the morning, go to the offices and all of that, come back later in the evening. Some men are not used to being around their wives that long. It's true that some men are not really friends with their wives. Most of the time, they just live together. They just cohabit and live as tenants, you know, in the same house. Unfortunately, they vent out this cabin fever, which they begin to suffer from, on their poor wives, rather than see it as a time to bond with their wives and their children. In some other cases, they become closer, they play games, they do things together. But sometimes, in some other cases, the faces of the wife just annoys the man for whatever reason, and it vents his anger on the woman, and even on some of the children as well.
You know, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, some will say they're just concerned about issues of trafficking and all, but we do know that you pay attention to issues of violence, child abuse and all. When you say that sometimes the face of the other person just annoys the other, so there is that reaction, which wasn't there before now because they spend a lot of time outside of the home, but now they are forced to be together. What do you think should be done or can be done to manage this situation?
Counseling. We have professional counselors, and so when we arrest the offenders and rescue the victims, which most of the time happens to be the wife and the children, we counsel them. And the man just says, you know what? I'm just tired of seeing this woman's face, you know. I mean, she's not my friend, you know. And it's like they've had, you know, problems with their relationship. They've just been managing it. But because they had to get out of the house to work, it was a little bit more manageable. But now that they are forced to sit in the house with their wives from morning till night, you know, they just couldn't stand it any longer. We succeeded, actually, in counseling some of them, but there are some really bad cases that we just couldn't do anything about. So we tried to find a way to keep the man away from the woman, you know, at least during the period of the lockdown. That was just the only way we could, you know, manage the situation.
Talk about this matter of domestic violence and how best to manage situations, but that will be when we come back from this break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We have the Director General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, Mrs. Julie Oka-Donley, in our studio in Abuja. Before we went on that break, you were talking about managing the situation. Alero, you wanted to ask?
Yes. Julie, now we're talking about domestic violence, and we're talking as if it's only men who are violent towards their wives. I'm sure that there are cases of women who are also abusive towards their husbands. Is that correct?
Well, all the cases that we came across were just cases of the men who were violent against their wives. You know, we didn't have any case of the woman being the offender or the oppressor, as the case may be. They were all cases that concerned the wives. I mean, the husbands against their wives.
Okay. When you say no cases of women and being violent against their men, is it that they've not been reported? Because there are some cases of women beating up their men. And as funny as that
Well, we
might
can
sound.
only work with cases that are reported to us. If for whatever reason the men are ashamed to report that their wives are beating them up, there's actually nothing we can do. We can only deal with cases that are actually reported. So there are cases where wives are abusive towards their husbands, but the husbands are not coming forward to report them for whatever reason. So we just have to deal with what we see.
Reporting. How much of these cases are reported to your agency? Because there is this thing that sometimes gets associated with this kind of matters, stigma. So do you get people coming forward to report issues of violence?
Yes, absolutely. In the last 2, 3 weeks, we've had over 40 cases of violence, but all the cases were violence against women by their husbands, violence against children, rape, incest, where the husbands raped their children, cases of sodomy, and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's. You also deal with issues of trafficking in persons. We haven't heard any sensational cases lately. Is it that your work in that area has reduced? Are we behaving better as a people?
Well, I would say right now, because of the COVID pandemic, things have been a little bit quiet. We've had more cases of violence against house helps, and we've had to rescue quite a number of house helps, whose madams had poured some hot water on them, inflicted injuries on them by putting hot irons on their bodies and all of that. So those are the cases that we actually dealt with lately. I believe because of the pandemic, things are a little bit slow as there's no, the restriction of movement. People are not able to travel from one place to another. So people are playing safe. But I foresee a situation where there will be a lot of online recruitment after the pandemic is over, because people would want to replenish their stock. I put it that way because human beings are now seen as a commodity. And of course, most of them would have died during this COVID-19 pandemic, especially abroad in the destination countries. So I foresee a lot of online recruitment going on, offering fake jobs that don't exist, scholarships and things like that. So Nigerians need to be very wary and very, very careful.
Nope.
Is there much trafficking within our borders going on?
Absolutely. There's a lot of trafficking going on within, mostly for domestic servitude and even sometimes for forced prostitution. You have people go within from one state to the other, bringing young girls and putting them in brothels and forcing them into prostitution. We've clamped down on a number of such and even sealed up the brothels and rescued a lot of girls. We have a lot of trafficking in, which is what's it called again? This baby factory is a kind of trafficking as well, where these girls are taken from various parts and put in a house, and the men come there to rape them, and they have babies, and they keep selling their babies. Right now, I think I have about 24 women in my shelter in Lagos who were rescued from baby factory. They've all had their babies now, and then they're in the stage of rehabilitation. So we had lots of cases like that.
Now, what do you think about this Yunusa case, which was concluded this last week? Okay, he didn't traffic the girl, but he kidnapped her, so to say, and married her and took her away to his place in the north. And he's been sentenced to 26 years in jail. You don't call that trafficking, do you?
There are so many elements involved in that case. There was an element of child trafficking, of course. There was an element of kidnapping. There was an element of rape as well, and forced marriage. There's so many elements, relating to that particular case. I personally was very upset about it. I wasn't in NAPTIP at the time, but I was really, really upset and prayed that she was going to get justice at the end of the day. And I'm very happy indeed, because this is the first case of its kind where somebody is convicted for a forced child marriage, amongst other crimes that he committed. And I hope that this is going to serve as a deterrence to others, and we're going to be having cases of like this where the offenders will be prosecuted and convicted and sent to jail. There was one case like this some time ago about a certain senator, but based on technicalities, being that the girl was an Egyptian, I think the case didn't go far. But this particular case so far has been the first, and I pray that it will be the last.
This matter of trafficking and violence, as the case may be, you talked about counseling. Is it enough to just say counseling will take care of this, or is it enough to just say Nigerians should be weary? What about education and information? How can we help to ensure that these things are minimized? Because some will say, I learnt it. I mean, this was what I grew up with. This is what I knew, for instance, in the case of violence.
Counseling is just one aspect. Awareness creation is key, which is prevention. And we've carried out a lot of massive awareness campaigns all over Nigeria. We have a lot of short, 1-minute video clips that we've put on all the social media platforms, just to make people know that these things are not right. And if they find themselves in such a situation, they know what to do, they know who to call, they know where to go. So we've put out that information everywhere. The counseling comes in when the victim is actually in our possession, and then we counsel them. And then we find out that most of the victims in this situation are victims who rely on their husbands for their means of livelihood. And so the men take advantage of that, thinking that they have nothing to do and nowhere to go. So after counseling them, we don't just say, okay, go back home, and we try to empower them, which is very important, because when a woman is empowered, it's very, very good for her. We also make those who don't go to school say, why don't you try and get some adult education? At least learn how to write your name, learn how to read, and all of that. But we still have educated ones as well, who work, in very high places, who are very well educated, and who are very comfortable. Some of them are actually even the breadwinners in their homes. But they find themselves, being beaten up by their husbands and taking their monies off them while they are feeding them and running their houses and paying school fees. So the situation is so complex. We have all sorts of situations, at the same time.
You spoke earlier about everything being a bit quiet now because of COVID-19. And you spoke about people who will be raring to go as soon as this is, what's the word now?
The lockdown's lifted.
As soon as things improve, getting raring to start their online recruitment and all that. Are the girls getting enough advice, and is there enough campaign to warn girls about such recruitments, and they should be wary of job offers outside the country?
Yeah, we can do so much as we can do. Let me put it that way. But the truth is that the state governments have a role to play, and they need to step up their game. And this is why we started setting up the anti-human trafficking task forces in some states. We have just in 5 states right now. But the state governments have to do a lot. They have to go to the communities. They have to go to all the local governments to carry out this campaign. NAPTIP, the federal government cannot do this alone. I keep saying it. The federal government cannot do this alone. The state governments, the local government, they have a role to play. They need to carry out massive sensitization campaigns, because these girls all come from a state, so they need to they need to complement NAPTIP's efforts. On our part, we'll continue to do what we have to do, because experience has taught us that most of these girls come from very rural, remote areas where they have little or no access to the internet, little or no access to the social media. So they are not aware. These traffickers move on. The moment they see there's a local government or there's a community that is a little bit enlightened, they move to the next and the next. And it's difficult for us to cover every area. So all hands must be on deck. National Orientation Agency, they have to be on deck. The local governments, the state governments, everyone has a role to play. The faith-based organizations, the CSOs, the NGOs, the media, of course, has a role to play. So we must all join our hands together and not just expect that NAPTIP alone can do the magic. Nigeria is very, very massive. So everyone must work together to ensure that we protect our girls and boys from being trafficked.
Now, Julie, Kingsley Ozugbo says to ask you why women or wives are not submissive Would a man who is not an animal beat his wife if not for her attitude? Asks Kingsley
Well,
Ozubo.
I don't know about being submissive or what he means by being submissive. Because there are some men, your home, your upbringing is very important. I found out, during the course of my work, if a man is not well brought up, the woman is in trouble. I give an example of myself. When I was raising my kids, I used to tell my son, you'd never lift your hands to beat a lady. You touch your sister. She's a lady. And my son grew up with that. But when a woman, when a child grows up to think that a woman is a tool that can be beaten, or a woman is less than him, and so he has a right to slap her at the slightest provocation, and the mother sees nothing wrong with it, I mean, there's a problem. I don't understand when men talk about being submissive. Yes, a woman should be submissive to her husband, but the Bible also tells me that a man should love his wife, and he should not beat up his wife. So it both goes it goes both ways. Respect begets respect. Some men are very abusive mentally. You abuse your wife mentally, and you expect such a woman to be submissive. I mean, I don't understand it.
Where this matter of mental abuse, there are reports that might actually be more than the physical abuse that is reported. How is NAPTIP handling that kind of abuse?
Well, that's a very, very difficult type of abuse, and through counseling, there's really not much we can do but to counsel them and to ensure that these women, you see, when you don't have confidence in yourself, when you have a low self-esteem, it's very easy for a man to put you down. I counsel these women and I tell them, do not let anyone, man or woman, put you down in any way. You need to build up your self-esteem. You need to be confident of who you are. You need to know who you are. That is how to start it. So when these women come to us and tell us, you know what, my husband is so abusive. He abuses me mentally. He never sees any good thing in anything I do. He talks down on me in front of everybody. I said, then you need to step up your game. Make sure that it doesn't get to you. Get yourself busy. You understand? Just do different things. Just ignore him and do different. After a while, he will be tired. But if you show him that it's getting to you, then it continues. Because some men are just, mentally abusive. They're just sadists. They enjoy seeing women unhappy. So if you're unfortunate to be with that kind of a man, then you have to re-strategize and make sure that it doesn't get to you. I know so many men like that, unfortunately. And I think it's part of a mental problem. They need counseling themselves. So such men also need to see a psychiatrist. They need counseling. I don't think such men are normal men, honestly.
But do we have enough capacity? When you've used this word counseling a lot today, and then you mentioned another psychiatrist. I mean, in other climes, you have professional bodies set up almost on every street where people can walk in and get some kind of counseling. Do we have the capacity for this?
Yeah, I can tell you we have a lot of trained counselors. We have a lot of trained psychiatrists in Nigeria. But the truth is that most of the time we are in denial. I mean, if you tell a man now to go for counseling, the first question he will ask you is, do you think I'm mad? Do you think I don't know what I'm doing? It's the mindset. We need to start to learn that going for counseling does not mean you're a madman. So, of course, yes, we need to start carrying out awareness campaigns again, telling people that, you know what, if you're having a difficult time at home with your wife or even with yourself, you can get counseling. It doesn't mean you are mad. Maybe when we start, maybe when we start educating people to change their mindsets, just like now there's so much education going on COVID-19, telling people that there's nothing to feel stigmatized about. If you have the virus, call the authorities and get treatment. Some people are still hiding and treating themselves at home, and then when it's late, they call the authorities and they die. So this same kind of education, awareness, telling people that, look, going for counseling does not mean you're a madman or you're a mad woman. I think it will also help, and that is one thing we're also going to be doing now. We're going to be encouraging people to come for counseling because a lot of people are just getting mental problems, just because of the mental abuse they are facing, especially in their homes from their husbands.
Mrs. Donnelly, just before we let you go, please respond to this tweet by Professor Enakena. He says, there's tension in homes where finance is strained because there's no clear roadmap on how to cushion the effect of the coronavirus. He says we should now plan for a census so we can have national economic policies to know youth/adult populations and the unemployed, and the employed. He believes that when we have proper structures, these issues of violence and trafficking will reduce immensely. That's what I think the tweet is saying. But what is your take as we wind down?
Well, I understand what he's saying, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk about violence and trafficking. And I want to say that health is wealth. I mean, if the husbands are angry that there's no money and that's why they vent out their angers on the women, you have to be healthy to make the money. And of course, these policies that he's talking about, if they are in place, yes, it makes a lot of sense. I agree with him totally on that. But all I want to say before I wind down is you don't have to use your wife as a tool, beating tool just because you're frustrated or because you don't have money or whatever the reason may be. You have to show some love and respect to your wife and to your children and even to your house help. Because if you do not, that people come after you. We don't care whether it's whatever the reason is for that action or for committing a crime. A crime is a crime, and we don't want to know why you committed a crime. If you commit a crime, we'll go after you, we'll pick you up, we'll arrest you, and make sure you go to jail. So try to be good.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Julie Oka Donnelly, who's the Director General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And we do hope that we'll help to curb.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, all right, we'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. Well, I was enjoying that piece of music and I was actually moving to the beat of it. But let's come back to now. We're talking COVID-19 and fumigation as a response. Well, that's a new word in our vocabulary more. We tend to use it every day now. We don't talk about disinfecting anymore. We talk about fumigating. What does that mean? Well, you know, this pandemic is teaching us all kinds of words, is teaching us all kinds of things. So we shall learn the difference between disinfection and fumigation. And we have the right person in the studio to give us a small tutorial this morning. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Oluwasegun Benson, and he's the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Fosgard Fumigants Nigeria Limited.
Thank you very much, Auntie Lara.
Good morning. And he's come along with the Public Relations Manager, Christine Anene. Good morning.
Good morning, Mom.
Good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Now, fumigation, disinfection. What is the difference?
Okay, thank you very much. The difference is disinfection is actually the removal of pathogenic microorganisms from surfaces and inanimate objects using specific chemical agents, i.e. your hydroxide, sodium hypochlorides, and all that. That's for disinfection. Now, for fumigation, actually the word fumigation is coined from fumes, so which is the process of liquid state to gaseous state. So it's
to fumigate, you're not using liquids, you're using fumes.
Yes, because it's liquid, but it comes out in fumes.
Okay.
So it's just fumigation. Now, a lot of people overflog it. Fumigation is actually a method, one of the methods of pest control. Pest control has so many methods. So fumigation is just one. It's just, but a lot of people have, they're stuck to that word fumigation. You know, perhaps it's just the method. And it's the process of killing vermin in a given environment using a specific chemical, like your insecticide and all that. So it's targeted at rodents, rats, you know, your vermin like that.
Snakes.
Yeah, snakes. So that's the difference. So when a lot of people, they tend to overflog the word, and it's just one of the process of pest control.
Okay, so fumigation is what has been going on since we came upon, or was, well, since it came upon us,
No, no, you mean
COVID-19.
No, you mean disinfection, actually. Disinfection is actually what is trending towards,
but
Yeah,
just
the
use
one
the
that you
word.
can do
Yeah.
on your own, yes. You can disinfect on your own, but you can't fumigate on your own. Government is fumigating markets and places like that.
Yeah, yes. Okay, now let me take us back.
Please tell us,
had,
explain to us.
exactly, we had a backlog just before the COVID pandemic. There was Lassa fever outbreak. So the government had set up process to carry out rodent baiting in markets.
To get rid of the rodents.
Yeah, to get rid of the rodents. Then while that
What do you
process was
call that?
ongoing,
What do you call that?
rodent baiting, baiting for rodents.
Okay.
You're baiting like, anyways.
Okay, all right.
Like I'm just trying to use the right word because everybody tends to use fumigation and all that,
Okay.
So I tend to want to use the right word so that everybody will
Please
understand.
do, after all, you're the
Yeah,
professional. We expect you to use the right words.
Thank you. So that was already
Going on.
ongoing before
Pandemic.
the pandemic came. Then disinfection was the word. Then, in fact, the governor of Lagos State actually flagged off a disinfection exercise. Now, what that did was it actually calmed down the anxiety for what the public was, like what was the control measure the government had in line. So that's when the disinfection came, it sort of like calmed anxieties down because people say, okay, what's our government doing to respond to this? So, I mean, you can imagine, let me give you an example. If an organization has anybody that has a COVID-19 case in their office, of course, there'll be anxiety, people coming back to work, and we're gradually heading to the second phase where offices will be fully opened. I mean, if you have a COVID case, workers will be a bit apprehensive, what's going on. But if the MD of that company has, done carried out the disinfection process before resumption, the workers can come a bit more relaxed, not, they'll be more relaxed to work. They know that, okay, it's been disinfected. So psychologically, it plays a key role for companies to engage in disinfection exercise to sort of like calm the anxiety.
How often should that disinfection happen? Because fumigation happens like sometimes once in a month, sometimes twice in a quarter. How often should disinfection take place?
Well,
because you're talking about taking out pathogens from any inanimate surface and all of that.
Okay.
So how often should disinfection take place?
Well, disinfection, you can disinfect daily if you want. You can do it weekly and you can do it monthly. It depends on it depends on the traffic of that, maybe the institution or the company. It depends on your traffic. So you can choose what fits you. But you can, now the reason why I would say you can disinfect daily is because your chemical agents you're using to disinfect allows you to carry out a daily exercise, but you cannot fumigate on a daily basis. You understand? Because of the residual effect of fumigation is prolonged. There's so much ion in the air. I mean, because the pesticide, so you cannot fumigate that regularly, as in that frequently, sorry. But you can disinfect even on a daily basis.
So in a place like an eatery, for instance, the counter where you go to place your order, I mean, that you have to disinfect like almost every 30 minutes or every hour or something?
Okay, very good question. And people would say, it's going to be, how are we going to afford, how are we able to afford, are we going to start building up cost of disinfection into our budget, all those things. But I tell you what, there are cheaper options of actually disinfecting surfaces.
Please let us know.
Like your typical domestic hypochlorites, in the right dilution, they can use to wipe surfaces. This is the pandemic era.
Normal bleach, for instance.
Exactly, and I tell people, this pandemic session, it's eating down into a lot of people's wallet, purses. There's no money. There's no point. What we need to do is to educate the public on the cheapest possible means to get out of a pandemic together. It's not about somebody trying to make money from a situation that everybody is dying. You understand? So your typical hypochlorite can actually do that job. So it takes you to reorientate your cleaners on how they can use certain, those hypochlorites to wipe surfaces and all that. Then now when you now go to industry, big industries, they too can use, industrial hypochlorite. Of course, they will have to put their money in their pocket and bring out something to do because they have bigger spaces and all of that. So they would have to do the real, the real industrial application. But for eateries and offices, you can actually carry out routine disinfection from your cleaners.
Okay.
Christine,
Yes, ma'am.
how much is this process helping in curbing the spread of coronavirus?
I would say it's helping a lot because, okay, imagine if this process is not there at all. It's going to be life endangering. So I would say it's really helping a lot. And First Guard Fumigant, we've been trying our best to, really contribute to the solutions to the problem, which is COVID-19. So I would say it's really helping a lot.
How do you guys do that? How do you go about this? Because we saw you in around here, one time you came to do your disinfection. That's fumigation. We noticed you came in with 2 trucks.
Yeah.
But how long does that stay when you finish disinfecting? How do you go about it?
Actually, he's the technical person who knows about that.
Well, I mean, like I said, we talked about traffic. We talked about how frequent. The more the frequency of your disinfection is relative to your traffic. Do you understand? Say, for instance, if you have government is opening businesses in phases, so meaning staffs are reduced and all that, so you don't get a lot of traffic in a place. So once a week would suffice. And don't forget that once a surface is disinfected, that means, sorry, can I just even tell you something about the virus itself? If from the common knowledge that it's known that it surrounds itself with fat. Yeah, it protects itself with fat. Now, part of the active ingredient in which we use to disinfect, caustic soda is part of the active ingredient. Now, caustic soda is also the active ingredient for soap, which we use to wash our hands. So it sort of makes sense that the soap will actually burn the fat, thereby getting to the virus. Do you understand? So we need to understand that. Going forward, it takes you, say, between 8 to 10 days, if you disinfect the surface, it would still be active on that surface. So even if you touch, you find that the virus cannot survive in surface that has been disinfected between that period of time.
Okay.
Just to answer your.
So tell us about First Guard.
Okay, so once again, my name is Christina Nene, and I'm the Public Relations Manager for First Guard. So in First Guard, we are very concerned about our customers. We're very concerned about the satisfaction of our customers because, just like he said, we're a core pest control company, and we help to provide environmental solutions to communities. So in First Guard, just like I said earlier, we're very concerned about our customer satisfaction, and we also send feedback form. After the completion of every job, we make sure we send feedback form via email, and we do this to know about ways that we can improve on our services. So, also,
How old has First Guard been? When was First Guard?
since 2005.
Since 2005?
Yes.
So is First Guard involved in the Lassa fumigation against Lassa fever and all of that
Yes,
as well?
yes, we're involved in it.
What was he didn't use fumigation?
No.
Pest.
Baiting.
Yeah.
The
Rat
ratting.
baiting.
Rat baiting.
Yeah,
Okay.
rat baiting.
Oh, God.
Rat baiting, because you can't. Just look at it. Let's just try to make sense out of it. You cannot use fumes to control rats. If, for instance, you spray any fume here, the rat will run now. It's not going to wait to inhale the fume and die. So those are wrong terminologies. So you bait for rats, or you trap them, you bait for rats. And see, now, if I can just 2 minutes to give us an insight. You see, we're fighting an invisible enemy in this COVID-19. Well, we've had visible enemies that we've done nothing about over the years. And I'll tell you, there's always been mosquitoes. There's always been rats. Rats carry Lassa fever. We see rats. Now, if there was a pronouncement by any scientist that says rats carry COVID-19, if you see any rats kill, I'm sure you won't see any rats again in Nigeria. Do you understand? But it's true. Everybody will go after those rats. But you see, we should use this pandemic to better plan from the federal level to the local government level. And why am I saying this? If we are now fighting, see how prepared we are fighting an invisible enemy. Now, there are enemies that have been visible with us time immemorial. I'm talking mosquitoes. I'm talking rats. We see them. So why can't we control them? In 2016, I gave a proposal on how we can control even mosquitoes. It takes a whole community to be involved, not just government. Now, if you're fighting malaria, just like they say about 300 children dying in 1 minute, those very, I feel sad when it's painful when I hear stuff like this, very preventable diseases. Now, we must understand the pest that we're going after. What is malaria? The most important thing in Africa, we should know that the female Anopheles, which is it's in sub-Saharan Africa, the Anopheles gambiae that carries that malaria parasite. They are anthropophilic in nature, meaning they've mutated. Now, you know why? If you come back in the days, mosquitoes don't stay on your walls waiting for you to come in. But now, seriously, call friends, find out you see mosquitoes just around your windows, your door. They're waiting for you to open the door so they can get in. This is the study that even in our textbooks don't tell us that. So they're mutating. I've been on this field. I've done nothing but
become
kill.
more intelligent.
Yes, they're mutating, and that's what it is.
They're smart mosquitoes.
Yeah. So they wait, so they come inside there. So we must understand that pets first. And the flights, the anthropophilic nature is that they prefer the blood of humans to nourish their eggs as to animals. You understand?
Okay, Chairman.
Okay.
When people have rats in their houses, they say they want to fumigate.
Okay, yeah.
That's the word we use.
Exactly, yeah.
No, but now you've told us it's the wrong word.
Yeah, you want to...
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you fumigate, what happens to the rats?
Okay.
Okay, when you do that exercise, not fumigate, that's the wrong word.
Okay.
When you go through that exercise, what happens to the rats in your house?
Good. Now, the rats will die. Right? If you bait a house for rats, the rats will die. And then when a rat is dead, it becomes a hazardous waste. So by right, it becomes a hazardous waste. Now, if a rat dies, it becomes hazardous because then the decomposing body, flies can perch on the decomposing body and then gives you that outbreak of the cholera we're talking about. So therefore, disposing for time immemorial, I'll say this today, and I stand challenged by anybody, that we have been carrying out practices that are wrong. Now, I was advocating this. I was on one station and I advocated that rodents that are dead, stop throwing those rodents on the road. Get a special bag and bag it. Stop putting dead rats in your dustbins because that is a hazardous waste. So the government must understand that we have a lot of stuff to do. All the stakeholders must be called in one forum to say, okay, how do we control these vermins that we see? Yes, COVID-19, we're not seeing it, and yet see the attention on COVID-19. It's fine. But what about the ones we're seeing? People are dying from malaria. People are dying from Lassa fever. So, and we know the culprits. So what robot system can we put in place?
So whether they're alive or dead, they're dangerous.
They're dangerous.
Chrissy, where Force Guard operates where and where? Just Lagos?
Yeah, in Lagos. But then we can reach out to other states if they want to. Yes, but we have our headquarters in Lagos.
Okay.
We're actually active in Oyo State. We're actually active in Abuja at the moment. But our full head office is in Lagos here.
You said that before the pandemic came in, we had the Lassa fever and all of that. That means there are a lot of things weighing and demanding services like this. As individually, we use hand sanitizers to disinfect.
Yeah, to disinfect.
To disinfect. But we might need to disinfect homes generally.
Yeah.
Is there capacity for that?
In Nigeria. Individuals, you see, individuals must take, you see, pest control, like I've said this so many times, pest control is a collective effort of the government and individuals. You understand? Everybody has to carry out their own responsibilities. Your responsibility is for you to actually disinfect or fumigate your house. However you want to do it. You want to call it pest control, a practitioner, or you want to do it yourself. But when you're doing it yourself, you have to ensure that there are guidelines. Just like I've said, if you kill a rat in your house, what do you do with it? It's the waste. You throw it in your dustbin. Now, don't forget that it takes about, 3-4 days before the lawma guys come to pick up your, the rat is already decomposing. And it's hazardous. You see, that's why you need to now reach out to pest control organizations that will tell you what to do. And I'll just say this on TV for the cheapest option. If you kill a rat in your house, or you see a dead rat, you can protect yourself, pick up the rat and dig the earth, maybe like 3 feet down.
Bury it.
And bury it. Yeah, and bury it. Those are the cheapest and safest practices, because I was going to say incinerate, but the world, due to global warming and all that, incineration is frowned upon, So the cheapest option for us is to dig 3 feet, not too much, because other people will come about water table, blah, blah, So, but the safest option to protect yourself is to bury the rats.
Okay.
And I stand challenged by anybody on this.
Mr. Oluwasegun Benson, who's the Managing Director at Force Guard Fumigants Nigeria Limited. Thank you very much for coming to enlighten us this morning.
Thank you very much.
And he came along with Christine Anene, the Public Relations Manager.
Thank you.
Also at Force Guard Fumigants Nigeria Limited.
Yeah.
Well, we have been enlightened. We now know the difference between
There is no more fumigation. There is disinfect.
Thank you.
And rat beating.
Yeah, you bait for rats. You don't get well.
Sunrise will be
Thank
right
you,
back with
Oluwasegun.
another interesting conversation. See you shortly.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, it's another year of the Muslim faithful all over the world. They are celebrating the Eid al-Fitr. Now, that comes just at the end of a period of fasting. But owing to the pandemic, everyone, it's been really, really low-key. And in fact, if you're not careful, you might even forget that your Muslim brother or sister is in a solemn period, and you need to be careful around them and then encourage them as well as they seek God. But we have here in the studio to help us understand what the situation, how it's been, and what the lessons are from this period, even as we move forward, is Barrister Alatoye Folorunsho Aziz, the Amir Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So, for the first time in like forever, the Ramadan came at a period of isolation, so to speak.
That's right.
How did that work out?
Okay, thanks very much. This Ramadan is a very unique one, especially to people of this generation, because it has never happened, at least in my own time, which is over 50 years now, that we will not go to mosque for prayers. It has never happened. That we will not be congregating to say Eid prayers. It has never happened.
That you will not congregate to
break your fast. Yes, to break our fast, exactly, and then celebrate together. It has never happened. But it has happened so many years ago. So this one increases us in knowledge, because we have to go back and start researching. Can government look at other ways, of handling it? We then discover that the best way to handle it is what the government has done, based on research and based on Islamic teachings. But it also gives us a whole lot of opportunities because we were confined. Those ordinarily who will not be learning, reading the Holy Quran, has a lot of time to read the Holy Quran, has a lot of time to read the meanings of the Holy Quran, has a lot of time to listen to lectures. A lot of lectures were done online and we were sharing. So people actually have a lot of time to learn this time around. So as we have the negative side of it, in terms of confining people, not being able to go to mosque, not being able to do congregational prayers, it also affords us a lot of opportunity
So,
to
in other
learn
words,
and reflect.
this keeping away from the mosque or keeping away from the gatherings to break the fast do not in any way reduce the efficacy of this period?
Not at all. Not at all. It doesn't. The only thing is when you do congregational prayers, there are more rewards. And that has to do with the concept of society, concept of citizenship. And that is what Islam is all about. Unity of mankind. So we foster that every 5 hours a day. And that's the lesson we have in there. But invariably we couldn't do that. But despite that, it didn't reduce the value of the reward that anybody, can earn during the Ramadan.
But 1 or 2 states have said that people can go to the mosque tomorrow.
Yes, I think our people had also called me and said, can we go to the mosque? I said, well, the rule is obey the last order. However, you must obey the health instructions. You have to keep distance, and then you should use your face masks, you should use sanitizers, both hand sanitizer and spray sanitizer, to make sure that you should wash your hand, and so on and so forth. You check your temperatures. So all these instructions, you have to follow them in full. Where the state government had said, we can't lock down for too long, and these are 2 states which are test case. So let's see how it goes. So because we have to obey the last order. That's what Islam is about. So I think let's hope good will come out of it.
But I'm sorry, just to clarify here, there's someone who's asking a question. I mean, the Sultan, who's considered the head of the Islamic faith here in Nigeria, has said, stay away from the mosque. But the government is saying, can go to mosque. How do they balance that out?
I would have expected the governors to obey the Sultan. I would have. Because ordinarily, I expect all Muslims in Nigeria, without exclusion, to obey the Sultan in terms of this administrative, procedure. Because it is in the interest of Muslims. However, where some governors choose not to obey the Sultan, now, if you disobey them and you are under them, it's going to look, somehow odd, as if you are entering into a political arena or something like that. It will not look good. But I don't feel good that some governors, especially if they are Muslims, because we just have to obey. Obedience is part of, life and success. Without that, there's going to be chaos.
Okay. Let's go back to the Eid itself.
Okay,
Eid el-Fitr.
that's right.
Number 1, what does it mean?
Okay.
And what is its significance?
Okay, thanks very much. Eid al-Fitr actually marks the end of Ramadan. It comes on the first day of Shawwal, which means when we finish the Ramadan, we go to thank Almighty Allah. It's about prayers as well. We end everything with prayers, with happiness, with joy, and then trying to celebrate, on that day that Allah had spared us for all this period to end this reward of the month of Ramadan. And what do we do there is actually to offer 2 rakats, 2 prayers. And these 2 prayers, there is a way we do it. The first one, you do 7, takbir. The second one, you do 5 takbir. All these takbir means we are praising Almighty Allah. And in the mood of celebration, we ensure that everybody actually celebrates happily. And that takes us to the concept of Sadaqatul Fitri. this Sadaqatul Fitri will contribute, some money, and it's shared. And for those families who are not able to afford, then you have to give them Sadaqatul Fitri so that they can also eat that day. And that is where the aspect of joyous celebration comes in. Actually, during this pandemic, we used the Sadaqatul Fitri model to share, resources to our people, because head of each mosque knows which family is not, that resourceful that we need to support. So nationwide, what we did was that we have regions, we have local jamaat. So those people who knows who needs, they compile them, send it to the region and send it to the headquarters. And we said, okay, send everything to them. We shouldn't have any complaint at all, all over the country. If anybody complains from anywhere, we have the Sadaqatul Fitri committee. So that committee is going to approach the president of the local jamaat. Then that one will approach the circuit, and the circuit will forward it to the headquarters. So, okay, send the account number of that person. I will just send the resources to that person. You buy what you need to buy. So that is the lesson we are learning from here. So when I saw the government struggling to really share, I said, if we had used the Sadaqatul Fitri method, we would have been able to reach all families in Nigeria.
So, is the Jamaat distributing any goodies tomorrow, for instance?
For tomorrow is actually everybody that is supposed to celebrate. As I have said, all mosques, all zones, we do Sadaqatul Fitri. And it's actually going to be later today that they will share it, because we have to give those people before we go to Eid, and they will have bought what they will buy. So it's not going to be tomorrow that the sharing will be done. It has to be today, later today, probably after a break of fast. The person who is the president of the mosque, the person in charge of the resources, we call them Secretary Mal, those who are in charge of finance, they will sit down with some other people, and then they will allocate to each of those families and give it to them today, so that they can buy what they will buy and they can celebrate happily tomorrow.
Okay, so you said this period, the pandemic, was an opportunity for research and all of that.
That's right.
Now, when the last time there was this kind of situation was 1918 or thereabout, much earlier.
That's right.
There wasn't that much of technology.
That's right.
So, are the Muslim leaders considering the use of technology going forward? I mean, to reduce, as some people say, this restrictions are likely to follow us. Mm-hmm. So there might be fewer gatherings and all that. So is that going to be employed going forward?
Yes, it is going to be employed if it happens again, because this is a lesson that we've learned, and I think we should not also go back on those learning points. Now, it has shown that we can actually conduct meetings, because basically we believe that as human beings, we have to relate with each other, say salam to each other, shake and hug each other as a sign of love. But it has shown us that we can do a whole lot with technology, because all throughout the Ramadan period, we did lectures, and we use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, all those other meeting, for us to actually hold meetings. So it is convenient for us to hold our various meetings. Okay. And so we will not want to go back on that. It has shown us that somebody do not have to travel down, from Maiduguri to Lagos as we used to do when we have our monthly meetings. So we can look at it and how do we perfect this? Because it's quite cheaper for us.
Okay, just hold your thought. We'll take a moment and come back to look at the use of technology in the practice of our faith going forward. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have the Amir Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Nigeria, Barrister Olatoye Folorunshah Aziz. Before we went on that break, we were talking about employing technology in the practice of our faith. But let's look a bit at that 1918, 1919 pandemic.
To 1919. That's right.
What happened at that time? I mean, people going for pilgrimage or that's the Lesser Hajj, right?
Yes, the
People
lesser
going for
Hajj,
the
Umrah.
People going for the Umrah at that time would definitely be sort of restricted.
That's right.
But now there's technology. So let's see. Paint us a picture. How then and now? How did it work?
I think there has been a very huge, differences between 1918 and 1919 pandemic and the current pandemic in terms of technology. Because at that time, when you are shut down, there are no technology to communicate. But this time around, there are a lot of technology to communicate. For instance, the Kaaba was shut down, the Haram in Mecca, and as well as the Haram in Medina was also shut down. But we can see the activities going on in those places online. And we can see the social distancing when they need to go, very few number of people and all those things. But in 1918 to 1919, there was no such opportunities. And a lot of things is when there is any announcement from Kaaba, for example, from Haram in Mecca, we quickly get to know of those announcements. We quickly get to know, we know what's going on. So information moves very fast. For instance, like this Eid al-Fitr that we are celebrating tomorrow, on Sunday, we got to know that Mecca did not sight moon. And I know that the hours between us is only 2 hours. So, and then again, when the Sultan also, announced that moon was not sighted in Nigeria, it was so easy for us to understand. So technology had actually linked quite a lot of things and make life much easier. And I said, this is the reason why I said we shouldn't go back on those gains that we have made on technology.
So within this period, before the lockdown proper,
right.
some people had already traveled for their Umrah.
right.
So how were they able to carry on while, and some of them are still there?
Okay.
So what's the arrangement like for those that are there?
There will be 2 categories, of people when they get there. For those who are very close to Haram and Kaaba, from their hotels that they can see Kaaba right there. For instance, most of our executives in Nigeria, when they go, they already have some rooms booked, and there you'll be looking at the Kaaba. So you can pray, from your room. Actually, the microphone of Kaaba is in their room. So they can pray. Those categories of people, they will be able to pray, very conveniently, even on that lockdown, in those hotels. And then they will just be serving them in their rooms. They don't need to go out. They don't need to do tawaf. They don't need to mix with anybody. So those are the first category of people who will still be able to, pray. But they will not be able to do all those rites of Umrah. For instance, performing circuit around the Kaaba 7 times, taking Zamzam, and so on and so forth. They will not be restored. That is even for main Hajj.
Okay.
This one, they will not get to Arafat section where they will stone their Hajj. So they won't be able to perform those rites other than to pray. That's the only thing they could do. The other categories are those who are not close to Kaaba at all. And they just have to pray wherever they are if they are not able to find their ways back to Nigeria. So I think those are the 2 categories, of people that we have out there.
Festus Akimboyewa says, while it will be extremely challenging and distressing for Muslims to celebrate Eid at home, they must continue to make spiritual sacrifices until the fight against COVID-19 is won.
That's right. He's absolutely correct. We need to continue to make a sacrifice. The sacrifices in terms of what I mentioned earlier on, making sure that nobody actually, goes hungry. Because you can see at the time there was hunger, I felt very bad about it. Bad in the sense that, these people who are hungry, is it that they don't belong to one religious group or the other that could make arrangement for them? Assuming the government is able to realize its failure now. The failure of the local government in being able to know who are living within those local governments. And that was the reason for the whole pandemic failure. But assuming the government has failed, because if the federal government gives something to the state government can only get to the people through the local government. So if that arrangement works very well, everybody will be fine. You'll be seeing food at your doorstep and all those kind of. But assuming the government had failed, what about the religious groups? We should be able to have a scheme of reaching all our people. And so this is where I agree absolutely that this sense of sacrifice has to continue. And it doesn't have to do with your own group alone. Anybody that is our neighbor, we have to take care of them. And that is when we can arrest the situation of those kind of unrest. And so many other groups as well, we need to find a way of addressing people's poverty, because it is the right of people to eat, it is the right of people to drink, it is the right of people to have shelter, and it is the right of people, according to the Holy Quran, to have wares. So all these things, they're right. They don't have to even beg for it. So both the government and the religious group should work together to make sure that everybody in this country has what we have called the minimum standard of living. So I absolutely agree that the sacrifice should continue, and this is one of the lessons of Ramadan that I will say should continue after even this Ramadan. We must be our brother's keeper, our sibling, our close family, our extended family, our religious group people, our professional people. They shouldn't be suffering, as much as we could. We should try our best. And that is what religion is all about, to make sure that everybody is fine. And then we will be able to eliminate crisis.
An important part of Ramadan is the breaking of the fast.
That's
Because
right.
I have experienced Ramadan with a friend who is married to a Muslim.
Okay.
And from about 3 o'clock,
Okay.
the cooking begins.
That's right.
And you would think there was going to be a party.
Okay.
First course, second course, third course, first course, and there's huge spread. And anybody who walks in is able to partake in the breaking of the fast.
That's right.
That must be a very important part of the Ramadan, which you all must have really missed.
That's right.
So how did you adapt to that change in your, this has been the tradition since you were a practicing Muslim.
That's right.
And this year you weren't able to do that.
That's right.
How easy was it for you to adapt to the new normal?
No, that's right. Those are the kind of trainings that I said, we've gone through during this pandemic, also
Lockdown.
that lockdown that comes with Ramadan. There are a lot of things that are privileges that we take
now
to be
you know that
right.
they are privileges.
Yes, they are privileges, but we think they are rights. So it's just the mercy of Allah on each and every one of us when we are doing those things. And this is another learning point, because there are a whole lot of learning points of Ramadan this year that in almost all the years we've been, doesn't come up. So we then need to now know that, look, there is other side of life. And we should think about others. We should think about others. Because at the time we were enjoying all those things, together, friends, class of people, probably you don't remember some other people are somewhere. But this time around, during that lockdown, and there was crisis, some people have not eaten. They have not even broken their fast. So many text messages. We have not eaten, nothing to eat. So you then remember that, look, okay, so the time I was, breaking fast in those various course meals and all the rest. So some people are not, eating as well. But because there was no pandemic, there is no platform for them to complain. That's why I said this pandemic, there are negative sides to it, but there are also positive learning points that made us to know that, look, our system needs to be improved. And we have to operate as a humanity, as one. We should take care of everybody to make sure that while you are eating your fantastic course meal, you also remember those that need basic foods to survive and break their fasts.
Mr. Owo is asking a question. He says, can a Muslim perform the rites of going around the Kaaba 7 times on their own by improvising?
by device.
No, you're improvising.
How do you improvise kaba?
How do you improvise it? Is it possible?
No, it's not done. I mean, let me say that I don't have the experience and I have not read it. What we know is that you have to be there because there are certain things you need to, read from one junction to the other. For instance, when you get to the third angle there, you recite certain prayer or banner until you get to the Babul Kaaba. And so these are rites around the Kaaba itself. But where
you have to be at the
You
Kaaba.
have to be there, and that's why everybody go there. Otherwise, if you don't have to be there, then a lot of people will not travel, and they will still, enjoy the same rights here. But because in the Holy Quran, Almighty Allah says that inna awala baitin wudiya lil nas lalladhi bi bakkata mubarakan wa hudan lil alamin. This is the first house, and this is my house. You will have to be there. We have a lot of stories, a lot of history about some prophets who will pass through Mecca. They will have gone to Jeddah, and Almighty Allah would, command them that, look, you've passed my house. They will go back there and still, perform that circuit. One of them is Prophet Sulaiman, who passed with his entourage at that time, and he did not say salam to the house. So, but another thing is with technology, I don't know, as time goes on, there may be fatwa to say that if you have Kaaba, anywhere you are, probably you can do something and circle, but I haven't seen that. It's definitely probably not this generation because that's never happened. We should be there for us to perform that right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So now that this is where we are, what would be the advice you have for humanity, for the Muslim faithful and their brothers and sisters of other faith going forward?
What I will suggest is that, you see, all the evils that are really disturbing us in this country, they are things that if we take the learning points of Ramadan, they can solve those problems. The first one probably is leadership gap or leadership challenges, however we look at it. If I use the Greek philosophy, for example, you have people that are the selfish individual, that they call them idiots in that language, but I would say selfish individual. You also have some people who are tribalists, some sort of, and then you have a last group of people who are citizens. Ramadan teaches us to be a citizen because you have to take care of everybody, not only yourself, not only your family, not only your religious group, but everybody that is around you. So this is a very huge lesson for us at all leadership level. The presidency, the governors, the ministers, the assignment is that everybody in the country must be taken care of. So this is the first learning point. Also, reading of the Holy Quran means that we have to live with knowledge. Because in Nigeria, with due respect, there are a lot of people that I would say are powerful mediocres. People have been saying it. We live without knowledge. Because somebody who thinks about himself alone is a mediocre. He might have a lot of resources to himself. So Ramadan also teaches us, to take care of others. So you can't do that. So you can't operate in ignorance. So definitely you have to operate with knowledge.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Alatoye Folorunsho Aziz, Amir Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks.
So as we'll be back for the home stretch, please stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us, and we're gradually winding down, and we have our artist of the week with us. He's a hip-hop artist, he's an actor, he's a businessman, he's a rapper.
He's an importer, exporter.
All together.
All joy.
And his name is...
Let me say it in the Igbo parlance. Ele Belis.
Oh dear. I'm sure you're not too happy to hear him call your name like that. Il Bliss, good morning. How
Good
are you?
morning. How are you guys?
We're good, Iliblis. I'm saying it with the Igbo accent.
Why do you keep murdering my name, my friend? How have you been, man? How are
We're
you?
good. We're good. It's good. It's good to see
Yeah.
you.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you for having me on the show again, yet again. This is like the fourth time.
We can't hear Il Bliss.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
yeah, we
There
can
you
hear
go.
you. That's good.
Thank you.
So, I hear the children behind. How are they doing? I hope they're not disturbing you too much.
Oh no, they are. They want to be part of every IG live, every Facebook live. It's my daughter, so she wants to know what I'm doing, and she wants to pop her head into the interviews every now and then. But she's fine. They're restraining her as we speak.
Well, nothing wrong with letting us see her
I mean,
face.
come on.
Be
Want her to
nice to
join
her.
us?
Come on.
Yeah, sure. Bring her in.
Kaima, come. Come.
Okay, so
You're going to be on,
we're having
you're going to be on national TV. She's so excited.
we're having an extra artist of the week. Her name's Kaima, Il Bliss's daughter. So she's joining the conversation in a
Yeah.
few.
So we have
Mama, come.
Artist of the Week and Daughter.
Okay, artist of the week and daughter.
Okay, I'm just going to show her. I'll take her up because
She's a handful. We can hear that. We can hear that. Yes. So Il Bliss.
Yes,
there she is.
Hi.
Say hello, Kaima. Say hi, Grandma. Grandma is watching you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Now, Neota
Sorry.
asked if she wasn't troubling you too much. She can't be troubling you that much if you're going to drop an album next week.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Clearly.
Okay. I didn't get that.
Yeah, so it can't be bothering you too much if you are able to come up with an album which you're going to drop next week.
Well, okay. I've been working. I don't have a studio at home. If I had a studio at home, maybe she would be on every song, because she probably barge in and interrupt the sessions. But I started working on a full album last year and wanted to drop it in November, December, the last quarter, but it didn't quite happen. So, and I pushed it to January again. It didn't happen. Then March, COVID came. And I said, no. I'm never going to let this Corona situation stop me from putting out music. So here we are.
There's no point asking you how you're coping with the lockdown. You've been busy.
I've been very busy, and to be honest, I haven't been bored for a second because so it just allowed me read a lot, allowed me write a lot. I started taking an online course in screenwriting, and directing, so that because I'm eventually going to make film. So I've just been busy, just trying to better myself, and not really worry about the pandemic, but while staying safe though. I've been home for like 7 weeks plus. Yeah, staying safe.
I don't think that we're surprised because we saw you in King of Boys and you were a real baddie.
Yes.
Tell us, how did you get that? How did you end up in that role?
Shout out to Kemi Adetiba. So Kemi reached out to me in 2017 and said she had a film project that she wanted to do. I didn't take her seriously. She sent me the script and I didn't read it because I didn't want to just dabble into film without being ready. So sometime early 2018, I found the script in my email again and I just opened it and read it. And when I saw what the story was about, I almost like I was shooting myself. I'm like, these people have shot this film and I should have just taken advantage of it when Kemi reached out. So I did the call of shame. I called her and I said, Kemi, hi. And she's like, yeah, Ili, how are you? We still don't have anybody to play your role. I'm like, send me the contract, I'll do it.
That's a good one.
So that's how I landed on King of Boys as Odogu Malay. It was an amazing experience.
After that experience, as amazing as it was, are you making any plans to stay acting for a while before you dabble into directing?
Um, after King of Boy, the music is a bit loud. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. After King of Boys, after that role, which you say was amazing, what were you making any plans to continue getting other roles, acting roles, until you dabble into directing?
Plan. There are other plans. It's not a one-off, and Kemi made it really possible for first-timers like myself and for Reminisce. You know, that was the first time we were on a film project. So she directed us properly, made us feel very confident. And you know, we acted right next to Shola Shobowale, Auntie Shola Shobowale, sorry, and a lot of other people that had a lot of experience already in Nollywood. But you know, Kemi made it possible for us to act and be confident. Then after King of Boys, other roles started coming, but everybody wanted me to wear a red suit and a hat and be an Igbo bad guy, you know, and I didn't want that because that's how they stereotype you. That's how they put you in a box creatively. So I didn't want to do that. Yeah.
So you're still waiting for that other good role to come along, right?
Yes, there are a couple of them. There are a couple of scripts on the table. I'm looking at them, and I'm also training myself. I'm also, trying to make sure that when I take those roles, I need it to be as distinct as what I did on King of Boys, because KOB set the bars really, really, really high. So I can't even falter. So it will come, and of course I'm writing as well. So I'm going to put out a film myself when things get better, and Corona allows us breathe better. Yeah.
But I must say you were a fantastic bad guy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, man.
So
Coming
you
from you, that's a
reformed in
huge
the end,
compliment.
right? Isn't that what
Sorry?
happened? I think you reformed in the end, yeah?
At the end of the film?
Yes. Or am I
Yes.
dreaming
Is
of
it the
that
part?
end to the plot?
Is it the part where I read out something from my palm and shot Reminisce? Was it the part you're talking about?
Yes. When
Okay.
you
Yeah.
shot the ultimate bad guy.
Yes, and nobody saw it coming because the ultimate bad guy was supposed to be my guy, my very good friend and my ally. But I mean, that was the plot. That was the biggest twist in the film, and it just kind of recreated my fan base all over again. So till today, I still get death threats from people saying, "Shay, you shot Makanaki. Don't worry, we'll come for you. We're looking for you, Odogu.
Oh
You
my
think you're
God.
bad."
Please tell them it's only a movie.
No, people don't get it. Sometimes they can't draw that fine line between film and real life. So every time I get messages on Twitter, they're like, "I can't wait for part 2. I bet you Makanaki is coming back. It's coming for you and your family." I'm like, it's just a film.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go back to your music now. You have worked with all kinds of people, Obi-Wan, Fino, so on and so. I mean, you've worked with almost everybody. This work that you're releasing next week, what is that all about? Tell us about it.
And overall, my 10th project as an artist, because sometimes you put out a full-length album, sometimes you put out EPs, which are like short form 6-7 song projects. This is that's why it's called Ili Chapo X. X is 10 in Roman numerals. You understand? So it's a milestone for me. It's a symbolic milestone for me. The music is loud again. Yeah. So can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so this is my 10th project, so to speak, and my 6th album. My albums are like chapters. So this is chapter 10, and this is basically everything culminated, that I have gone through, everything that I've experienced, from fatherhood, to business, to longevity in the business, to even some social political songs that I have. So it's all like a book, like different chapters to a book. So this is classic Ill Bliss. It's hip hop music, Of course, there are quite a number of features on it as well. Yemi Alade is on Fever. Niniola is on Superman. Fino is on Opaiweka. Olamide is on 40 feet containers, which we already dropped. And then Johnny Drill, my friend Johnny Drill, is on Heaven. So that's what it is. It's a diverse body of work. I talk about everything from losing loved ones to being a family man and sustaining the pressures that come from the music business, to love, to social commentary. Everything all wrapped up in one. Yeah.
But was it difficult putting it all together, getting all these people to come work with you?
I think I'm blessed in a very different way because, okay, I'll give you an instance. Yemi was in California shooting a video and I sent the beat for Fever to her because when I was working on the music, I heard the guitar riff and I said, this has to be Yemi Alade. So I just took a shot and I sent it. And Yemi just got back to me on Instagram and was like, boss, this is a record, I'll do it. She recorded it a couple hours, and sent it back to me. And then I hadn't even put my verses by then. So I just started writing my verses. And for Niniola, the same thing. I have a lot of respect from my colleagues. They kind of look at me, they always look up to me and they always want us to work because we are family first before even being artists. So,
hold on, you said Yemi Alade recorded her own.
It's never difficult.
You said Yemi Alade recorded her own even before you started writing your own verses.
Yeah. So we spoke about it and she had an idea and I'm like, let's make a love song. So she was like, okay, boss, can you just guide me? Let me even see the direction. So I just said, okay, baby, I'm a tycoon. See us, I'm over the moon. I got Biano Lugi soon. I got my Biapo Lugi June, July, August, and your Mayor White's wedding.
Okay. That's
she heard the
interesting.
lines and she said, oh, okay, I like the way you're talking. You're giving me the Igbo man with the thick intonation vibe. So she now went ahead and wrote the song and wrote the chorus. And then she sent it back and then I finished it off. For Lamide, I sent him a couple of other beats, including 40 feet containers. He chose 40 feet containers. I wanted to do something that was a bit more, maybe groovy, a bit more cultural. He was like, nah, boss, let's give them the Tinkan, the rural port music. 40 feet container, importer, exporter. So that's how we ended up making that one as well. So it was never hard. It was a great experience, just putting out music with your friends and your family.
Now, you said this in this album, you talked about everything from your life, basically the different stages of your life, the things you've had to go through, the lessons to learn and all of that. Would this be like a chapter closer for you to transit to other things in the creative industry?
So I'll be honest with you guys. A couple of times I woke up and I closed the chapter, but God reopened it. So that's what a lot of people don't know. So sometimes I say, okay, I've made enough albums, I've impacted enough, I should transition. But then again, the music keeps coming back to me because it's already in my DNA, So I don't know what God wants, but if God says this is the last album, then it's the last album. But I have a lot of music still left in me and I just have so much more, I feel like I have so much more to give. I also want to mentor more artists. The same way, I've put in a lot into the careers of Fino, the careers of Chidinma, etc., etc. I want to build the next generation, of artists.
Okay,
Yeah.
Boys, we'll just take a short one and we'll be back to continue the conversation. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We were watching a bit of Bliss there, and he's still with us. Bliss, so yeah, that work's coming out next week. Chapter 10, you said.
Yeah.
And you were many times considered transiting, but God always has a way of bringing you back. You still want to, you were saying before that break, you were talking about building or imparting more to the next generation. How do you plan to go about building the next generation?
Okay, so it's in stages. First of all, I'm from the southeast, and you can hear that from my music. I grew up in Enugu in the 042. over the years, I've tried to start mentorship, like a mentorship platform for the creative community out there. So I am big on creativity, and I'm also big on education. You know, because I can be here today because I mean, you know me from UNN. You know, if I can be able to navigate through this entertainment industry, you know, and just keep my head intact because I have a good degree of education. So I want I want the youngins from the East, you know, to emulate that. I don't want them to think that music or entertainment is an option for school. So I have been doing that for a couple of years. You know, I've also tried to put people on musically and in all kinds of artistic endeavors. So that is my give back, you know, to the next generation from the Southeast. Then, of course, coming out here to Lagos, a lot of people, I am always in the middle of youth culture, you know, so I am always speaking to the young people. You know, I speak to them. I go out, if it takes going to a school to speak to them about being in the music business and keeping your head together, then we do it. If it means going to the churches, we've also done that, you know. So that's what I'm doing because the youth need mentorship. They need role models. They need more role models that can help them shape their lives and choose the right direction in life.
Ilblis, if I may come in here, I was going to, the second part of that question had to do with the fact that you see a young person come into the creative industry and the next thing is they want to open their own record label or they want to open their own production outfit. How did you find those who want to stay under someone and be coached or brought into the limelight? Maybe because the older ones are not giving them what they consider their due. Is that also being looked at?
To be very honest, the Nigerian youth, the today's youth is very can be so impatient yet creative at the same time. Because the truth is, they want to do a 0 to 100. I mean, tomorrow they want to start today and open up the record label tomorrow. You know, but I come from a generation where, you know, servitude, you know, is part of your work. So you bow your head, you learn the business before then you begin to strike out. But I have seen artists that make a hit or two hits and they think, okay, it's time to cut off the label and the initial investors and then bring in my own people. And for me, they always crash most of the time because they don't even have the requisite experience, you know, to pull off running a record label in Nigeria. It's tough. You know, so what I do is I don't run a record label structure, so to speak. What I do is if I set out and I say I'm going to help and I'm going to support an artist, I go ahead and I support the artist because to be very honest and with all sincerity, I'm fine. Financially, I'm good. I'm sound. So I don't need to make money from any artist for me to be, you know, to stand. So I put them on and I share some of my experiences that I've had in the business with them. And I pray to God that they hear it and they stand over time.
Thank you very much, Ilblis, and we wish you all the best. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the silver screen again one of these days. Of course, you have told us clearly not acting a bad guy.
No. There'll be other things. Maybe next time I might be, I don't know, man, but I'll let you guys know. Channels is family. And you guys have always stood with me from when I got into this business. So you'll be the first to know about that next movie project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ilblis. And that winds
guys,
up today's...
Before we go, how have you been coping with COVID?
We don't have time for that, Ilblis. That is talk for another day. We have to close the program now. And Ilblis closes our program for this Saturday. We'll bring you a fresh one. Next week, I'm Alera Edu, wishing you all the best. And please, please, please pay attention. Be aware. COVID-19 is still out there ravaging the land. And it is not true that there is nothing like COVID. There is COVID-19. See you next week.
I'm Nell Tagbe, thanking you so much for letting us be a part of your day. All of you that sent in comments, the ones we could read and the ones we couldn't read. We do appreciate you and want to encourage you to keep doing, but also encourage you to be the best you can be and reach out and touch somebody else's life. Be all that you can be to somebody else. Let your gift beautify somebody else and you'll be better off. See you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.